So guys, I finally got around to working with my ZeroTech Dobby. This is a mod I've been trying to do on the CPU. What this unit has is a Qualcomm Snapdragon 801 processor. It runs at 2.3 gigahertz. It's a quad core. It's got 2 gigabytes of RAM. It's got 16 gigabytes of internal eMMC storage, and it runs an Adreno 330 GPU. Now, I won't get into detail on this drone. I might do a video later with more in-depth details about it and some flight videos. But what I did here is I pretty much flew the drone to its full potential to help the processor heat up to its average heat, which was about 8 to 8.5 minutes of flight. And I wanted to do that so that prior to this mod I can show you guys the results of the heat that's on the heatsink, which is supposedly supposed to keep the CPU and GPU cool on this unit. Well, my project here is basically going to be to do away with the heatsink, readjust the fan in a different position inside the drone, and then run the flight again till the battery drains, which is what it did at this point, and then get my results. So what you're about to see here are the results from this flight with the standard heatsink and fan setup. Now, I'm able to pop this open easily because I've already taken the initiative to unscrew the 10 screws at the bottom. I'll demonstrate that in further detail when we go inside to do the mod. But let's go ahead and get a reading on this. So as you can see, that first hit was 118.9 Fahrenheit. And we're going to do it a second time. And it's about 119.4 Fahrenheit at this point. So anywhere between 118 to 119.4 is the average heat with the way it's set up from factory. So now we're going to take it in, perform my little project here, and see what the end result will be. Hope you guys enjoy this. So first thing first, as I said, there's a total of 10 screws, and I'm going to show you where they're located at on the drone. You're going to have 2 up in the front area of the camera. You're going to have 4 on each side of the frame. Then you're going to have 2 on the sonic sensor, and then 2 out towards the rear of the drone for a total of 10 screws. I've already taken them off prior to this, that way it just shortens the video a little bit, because we've got a ways to go and I didn't want the video to be extremely long. So once you take the screws out and you pop the cover off, you'll immediately see the heat sink. You're going to use, this is a flathead right here on this screwdriver, but what you're going to end up using is a hex screwdriver. I'm sorry I don't have the size for you. Let me see if I can get that for you. I think that's going to be, hold on here. That should be a 15 hex. And that's what I ended up using to get the screws off. Now the 4 screws that I'm going to take off here that I'm going to show you, which is here, and there's 4 on each side. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4. You don't really need to take these off. The reason why I did so is because I wanted to take this little metal frame, or I should say aluminum frame, that holds two flex cables that are underneath near the CPU. In the process of taking off the heatsink, I didn't want to damage anything, so I tried to get off as much as I could that was surrounding the heatsink. So once you get this off, that's the metal that I'm talking about, and then basically the purpose of it is to hold the two flex cables, which I'll show you. Those are located right there and right here. This, like I said, you don't really need to take the screws off, but for me, I felt it was better for me to do so. So once you take these screws off, I'll show you how simple it is to get the heatsink off. So once you take the screws out and you're ready to take the heatsink off, you'll have to give it a little bit of a tug on one side. It'll be the side, depending on which model you get. The earlier models that came out, they didn't have this aluminum tape, which is this black, what you see me trying to get off here. My model had it. I'm not sure why they did that, really. I mean, I don't see the purpose of it. But what you're going to have to do is, I got a razor blade. That's how thin it is. It's literally like tape, but it's made out of aluminum. Once you pry the CPU off, right here where I'm showing you, that's where the tape's bonding or holding the heatsink from coming away from the system board. So what you'll need to do is grab the blade and cut along the edge, which I'll demonstrate here for you. Okay, once you got the heatsink apart, as you see here, you can see where the aluminum tape's at right there. That's what you're going to want to cut apart. Otherwise, you won't be able to get the heatsink off. And then, of course, you've got your CPU, your GPU underneath. And you saw what I pointed out right now. You see these I guess, I don't know what they call them, thermal pads. Those are real shoddy when it comes to keeping a CPU cool. I would never recommend anyone using these. That's by default factory standard. They're cheap, inexpensive, and they're not very effective, which could be one of the reasons why this drone heats up to what was it we tested earlier, 118, 119 Fahrenheit. We're going to see if my mod's going to put an end to that. But as you can see here, look how, I mean, this heatsink's not going to really, it's not very effective. I mean, the idea was nice. The plan of the layout, the idea of it was nice, but the effectiveness, it's just not worth it. It's junk. So once you get the heatsink off, the next thing you want to try to gently pry out is the fan, and it's a real tiny fan right here. Now, the airflow direction of the fan, as you can see these vents, it's actually, in the way they had it set up, was it was pushing air out from the unit, which basically it was trying to accumulate the heat from the heatsink and force it out of the drone. The other mod that I'm going to do is I'm going to take this fan out, but I want the direction of the air hitting the GPU and CPU, not blowing away from it. I want it blowing on it. And I'll demonstrate more in detail what I'm trying to accomplish here. Just bear in mind that the back unit right here, where you see the actual, not the side where the blades are exposed, but the back side, that's the flow, that's the airflow, that's the direction of the airflow. I know it looks like it's not really going to blow any air, but believe me, it blows plenty for this small little drone, enough for the CPU and GPU to be affected by it. Just keep in mind, again, you want it blowing on the CPU and GPU. And my idea here is the cover is going to go on top, and right around here is where I'm going to go ahead and make my circumference to almost be the exact size of the fan itself, so it doesn't expose a lot of the inner workings of the drone, and also so it doesn't look too bad. Oh, another thing I wanted to mention to you guys. Look how heavy this thing is. I want to show you. We'll go ahead and add this other thermal pad just to get a accurate read of how heavy this thing was on the drone. We'll zero this out. And as you can see, we're talking 8 grams. Now you're probably thinking, well, 8 grams is nothing. Believe me, on a drone this size, and 8 grams will affect its flight, you know, as far as how heavy it is, which in turn, the heavier the drone, the more power it needs to keep it maintained in the air, and it all comes down to battery life. So, I mean, you're already eliminating 8 grams of weight off the drone, which would probably give you a little bit longer flight. I'll see if I can test that out as well, the difference between having it, the heat sink, and having it not on the drone. So here I'm just collecting my thoughts, trying to figure out how I'm going to get a good measurement to come pretty close to the circumference of the blades on the fan. Oh, and also underneath here, these pads, I guess they were used to compress the heatsink, which again, I don't see the purpose of it. It really was not effective, so I'm taking these off, which will reduce more weight. So let me get these off real quick. Okay, now that we got the heat sink off and squared away, I want to power the unit on because I want to make sure that I am correct on the direction of airflow. And yes, the air at this point right now is actually blowing on my finger. My pointer, which is directly above the fan. And that right here, it's not blowing in this direction, it's blowing from this direction, the back side. And that's really what I wanted to test at this point, just to make sure I was correct. Let's go ahead and shut this down. Nope, I think I gotta hold it longer. I forgot about that. I have to do it again to shut it off. Okay, and to give you an idea of where I got the circumference, the size for the fan itself, it just so happens a penny was the perfect fit for the cut that I'm gonna do on the cover. As you can see, it's almost the perfect size for the fan itself, so that's what I'm going to use as my template, and that's going to help me get a pretty good cut for the fan. So at this point, if you guys are interested in doing this mod, I've kind of already figured out the cut and where it needs to be, of course using the penny as my template. It's almost going to be directly on this one molded plastic line, if you can see that, or what you want to do is where the E's at, put the very edge of the penny on the E, and that's going to be just about where you want it, and that's almost going to be near perfect. So the way I did that, if you're wondering, is basically I put the shell on top of a bright bulb, and I put the penny above it, and I was able to see exactly where the penny matched on the underside where the plastic molding frame was at. Earlier I showed you that plastic strip that was hanging on the inside, or I should say it was molded on the inside. That's how I was able to get accurate on that. And so at this point I'm just disconnecting the fan. Be careful when you do this part, because those wires are extremely thin. I mean, I'm talking like hairline thin. Grab them at the head of the connector. Don't pull the cables, whatever you do. Now this is the direction of airflow, and that's what we want. And mounting it, this is what I'm going to try to show you guys, is that this aluminum brace is exactly where I'm going to mount the fan on. And to do that, it took me a little while to figure out how I was going to make that happen, and then it dawned on me that, you know, I have with me on some previous projects some 3M tape, which I'm about to grab right now. This stuff is real durable, and once it sticks, I mean, it's pretty hard to get it off. So once you use the 3M tape, which is this product right here, it's double-sided tape, and like I said, it's extremely strong. I mean, I use this to mount my webcam, I'm sorry, not my webcam, my Soku cam on my helmet when I motorcycle ride, and I've had that on forever, and it still holds on till today. But this is where I'm going to mount it, and it's not going to be the square that you see. I'm actually going to go ahead and you know, draw out a circumference to match the frame all the way around the fan, and I'll use that as my you know, my template. I'm going to go ahead and use that. So I'll go ahead and demonstrate that now. So here's the two drawings that I did with a pen, and they're pretty close to the circumference of the fan already. I didn't want to make them too big, because keep in mind that direction is where the air is going to be blowing through. And as you can see, you've only got 3 slits on the backside, and I wouldn't want to obstruct those openings because they're very small. Even though they're very effective, because when the fan starts kicking in, you can actually feel that wind coming through. But I didn't want to make them any bigger than the circumference of the fan, so I went a little bit smaller. And at this point, I'm basically just cutting out my templates, and then I'll go ahead and take the protective, protective coating that's on these, and then go ahead and mount them onto the fan. I'll demonstrate that for you here. One more thing I want to mention, guys, is that I went with 2 layers because it actually lifted it higher, not extremely high, but high enough to where I believe it gave a little bit better airflow. Because keep in mind, the air coming in is going to have to keep both the GPU and CPU cool, so you don't want it extremely close to those components. And I'll demonstrate to you here shortly. If I can get my nail out of the way, I'm going to show you. That's how far away it's going to be from the CPU and GPU, which is perfect. I mean, that's going to allow more airflow to come in through and you know, have some effect on the cooling process of the GPU and CPU. Just wanted to show that for y'all. And here I'm just figuring out where I'm going to mount it. Of course, I want the cable to be on this side of where the connector's at, so there's enough slack. And once I find my mount, I just go ahead and force it on there just a little bit. And like I said, that 3M tape works really well. I mean, the fan's not going to move. It might be a little loose because it's just on that small, thin aluminum brace, but believe me, it's not going to come off. And here you can see the distance that it is from the CPU and GPU. And as I said before, that's going to permit it to have a lot more airflow. Because keep in mind, once we put the cover on, it's just going to have nothing but cool air going through. And it won't be able to escape. The only way it will be able to is underneath this drone has vents. And here, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and just use a pen and go ahead and start the process of making my template, so I can go ahead and start drilling out the circumference on this cover. And so for right now, what I did was I started off with a small drill and then went with a medium drill and then pretty much just a large enough drill till I got to the point where it was about the circumference of the fan, which is pretty close to the penny, but not as quite. It's a little bit smaller for that in circumference. I really didn't take the measurements on it, but if you really need that, hold on here, I can get you the last drill size that I ended up using in order to get the circumference that I used for this cut in order for the fan to have sufficient airflow coming in. Let me get that for you real quick. Okay, and that size was a 1/2 inch. So the final diameter of the drill cut on the circumference of the fan was a 1/2 inch drill, just in case you guys were wondering. So guys, with the last drill, this is the 1/2 inch that I was referring to. This was my final cut. That is as far as I went. Anything beyond that, you're probably not going to get good results with airflow, because you got to keep it pretty close to the diameter of the fan in order to get that perfect intake. The other thing I want to mention is here I just shaved off some of the mold that I was referring to earlier. The blade did an okay job, but later I got my Dremel too and cleaned it up really nice and clean. I just didn't want to put that on the video because, you know, I like to be very thorough, but if that was the case, this video can easily go into an hour if I were to put every single detail, every little thing I did. So I'm just kind of giving you the highlights and kind of rushing the video through. But all in all, the project only took me maybe about an hour and a half, really. But with battery charging and video editing and you know, all that stuff, it turned out a lot longer. So, you know, I don't want to bore you guys with a long video, so I'm just kind of demonstrating here all what I did. As you can see here, that's the end result, and now it's just a matter of putting all the screws back and taking it out for a test flight, which is what we'll do here next. So here guys, what I did was same scenario. I let the drone fly until it was depleted, and to my surprise, on average I would get about, when I first got the drone, the batteries were fresh, I was getting about 7 to 7.5, almost 8 minutes of flight. I don't know if the mod had anything to do with it. It must have, because now I'm getting at least 8.5, I'm sorry, 9 to 9.5 minutes of flight. So that was pretty interesting to me. I don't know, the batteries are not new. Like I said, I've had this drone for a while, but definitely I saw an improvement on that. Okay, so here guys, again, you know, I didn't mount the screws to the frame yet because I knew I was going to have to open this up pretty quickly just to get a accurate, or try to get a close to accurate reading. And our first read is 96, but I want to try it again. 98. Actually 98.3. Let me try this again. 97.9, but this time I'm gonna go ahead and give it a couple of more hits because I want you guys to see that it actually did make a difference. 98.2, and at this point I'm even gonna let it reset to show you that these are actual readings. This thermometer, when it says off, that means it's already reset. So now we're gonna go ahead and test it. So as you can see, it's anywhere between 97 to 98 on Fahrenheit, as opposed to earlier where it was anywhere between 118 and 119. That's a significant difference. So that's my conclusion. I really like this drone. I don't fly it as much. I'm happier with the bigger drones because they got longer distance, but I'll try to see if here in the near future I can go ahead and do some more flights with this drone. I'm giving this a thumbs up. We had a successful project. It worked out just great. If you all liked it, maybe you want to try it. I think I've gone over it pretty clearly. If you have any questions, let me know. I'll be more than happy to answer them. And enjoy the rest of the video. As always guys, thanks for watching. Peace out.